Welcome back. Steve Price in for Chris Kenny all this week. Now, I worked in the cutthroat business of talkback radio for 33 years in Melbourne and Sydney with the biggest names in radio, Laws, Jones, Mitchell, and of course my former adversary and more latterly colleague, Ray Hadley. Now, Ray set a record today that I am boldly going to say will never be broken by anybody. 20 years as the #1 radio show in Sydney between 9 a.m. and midday. 158 survey wins in a row, plenty against me. He is, of course, he's broadcast more widely than that. He's networked right around Australia. Famously, an old boss of ours once told Ray Hadley, listen, mate, you're a good football caller, but I think you're going to struggle presenting news, current affairs and talkback. That's maybe one of the most costly decisions ever made in media, any media by anybody. But Ray's much more than a great broadcaster on his morning show. And as we head to the Paris Olympics, my thoughts go back to Sydney 2000. His call of the Australian swim team, the winning 4x100 freestyle Smash You Like Guitars race featuring Ian Thorpe, was unbelievable. The Aussie Walker disqualified in, as Ray put it, the shadow of the stadium, and of course his Go Girl Go gold medal call of Kathy Freeman. Now, as good a caller as anyone in the world, I would suggest. Raymond, congratulations, mate. What an effort.
Well, I'm very humbled, Stephen, from a colleague like yourself, and you were with me in the year 2000, all those years ago, and that quote you've attributed to the then CEO was actually, I think you're an adequate sports commentator, but you'll never make a talkback host. That prompted my leaving 2UE 24 years ago, after 19 years there, and led to the adventure I've been on for the last 24 years, of course, at 2GB, and gets me to where I am today.
Yeah, I can't believe 20 years since you deserted me at 2UE, took all of Singo's money and turned up at GB, and look where you are now, mate.
Well, yeah, it was funny about Singo. I'd been terminated by 2UE via a fax from a bloke called David Bacon, who now runs a community radio station somewhere, I think. But anyway, we won't dwell on that. Anyway, they sent me threatening faxes, and I'd been sacked, and Singo had been offering me a job for quite some time. I'd known him for quite a while. He wanted me to call the football. So I rang him up and said, look, that job offer, is it still available? He said, well, you're worth a bit less today than you were yesterday because you got the sack, didn't you? And I said, well, yeah, you're probably right. And then I started on Christmas Eve 2001 doing breakfast, and then Alan Jones joined in March. And Singo announced at the Park Hyde, I think it was, that Alan was joining 2GB from 2UE. I was at the back with Singo's mum, his late mum, and Bob Rogers. And unbeknownst to me, Singo had hatched a plan with the directors and announced, after Alan had gone through what he was intending to do, that Ray Hadley would go up against John Laws. I nearly fell off my chair because I'd gone there to call the football. So on the way back to the office, I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you won't knock that back. It's a chance to have a crack at talkback. You've been doing it casually for a while. You might as well get into the deep end. And I said, well, the football, I've come here to call the football. He said, no, we'll get another football caller. And I said, no, well, I've brought Bob Fulton, Peter Frelengos and Stephen Roach with me. I can't just ring them up and say, boys, good luck with the football. I'm going to do a talkback program. So he said, what will you do? And I said, well, there's a plan here. I said, I'll work 7 days a week from March to October during the football season. He said, you can't do it. I said, I will. I did it for 12 years. Nearly killed me, but I did it. And it cemented, I think, the fact that people, even though they may have not particularly liked me all that much because of my shock jock views, they said, gee, the bugger works hard, so let's give him some brownie points for that. And that's been, I've worked every public holiday since. I work Anzac Day, Good Friday, Easter Monday, the long weekend in June, long weekend in October, straight after the football grand final on a Sunday night. And that's what we've done. And all my staff do the same thing. And now everyone at the station does the same thing. I said to the new owners of Channel 9, I said, if you're going to get fair income about this, you've got to tell people to stop having public holidays and start to work a bit harder. They can't get there on a Thursday and say to everyone, now, you've got to really pull a bit harder. You've got to really do the right thing. I'll be back on Tuesday. You've got to make sure you're there for them. And that's what we do there now.
Yeah, no one could ever question your work ethic. I wanted to ask you, how much do you put your success down? And look, I've done talkback radio, as you know, like you. How much do you put your success down as being more like your audience than some of your competitors? I mean, there's no Rolls Royce that Hadley drives around in, no chauffeur-driven cars. So you identify, and this is what talkback has to do, you identify with your listeners and you understand the pain they're going through.
I'm the product of the Housing Commission estate in Western Sydney originally. My dad was a butcher. He died prematurely at 46. Mum worked in a factory, a factory for Vincent's powders. Your older viewers would remember Vincent's and Beck's and those powders. Mum worked there. She took a lot of Vincent's too, I think, at a time. But I gave her plenty of headaches as a boy. But that's where I came from. And you won't see me, at fancy restaurants. I'll be at the local club, the RSL, the pub, having a feed with my family and friends. And, I remember running into a lady about 2 years ago at the shopping centre at either Coles or Woolies, and she said, "Oh, you do your own shopping?" I said, "Yeah, and I eat the same food that I buy here as well, and I actually drive my own car here." And I mean, there's got to be some sort of normalcy, even in the media. You can't all be in the back of limousines running around when you're telling people how tough it is out there when they're, cost of living's going up, electricity's going up, petrol's going up, everything's going up, and yet, But, we're overpaid for what we do. There's no doubt about that. And, I admit to that. But to get me overpaid, I've had to put 42 years into it. It's not exactly come easy. And the first job I had, and I've still got the contract on the wall, a bloke called David Greenwood signed me in 1982 at TUE for $19,500. At the time, I was a trainee auctioneer, then an auctioneer. I was earning about $38,000, so I cut my wage in half to get a start in radio. And it was a long time before I got back to equal level pegging with that, probably not 10 or 12 years.
I mentioned Sydney 2000, and I know you're off to Paris, and I'm looking forward to hearing your calls. What do you think's your best sports call?
Oh, Kathy Freeman, without a doubt. I've done 98
Go, girl, go.
State of Origins. Look, I tell you why I think it's the best. The expectation, she'd run second to Perec in Atlanta in 96, where I was, and Perec wasn't there. The French girl was out. So the expectation was this young Australian woman would win the 400. That was the expectation. And she was odds-on favourite to win. But you think about the 100,000 people at the stadium, and I can still remember as I was and as you appreciate, you don't broadcast in a box at the Olympics, you're in the crowd. Yep. You're right out there in the crowd. And so I'm looking, and I stand as I call, and the blokes behind me start hitting me with programs to make me sit down, but I ignore them. And then what happens then, the sea of lights, the cameras, they go off down the back straight, past the 300, past the 200. And she's moving up. She's in the middle lane because she's the fastest qualifier. And then all of a sudden, there's this sense of anticipation. As I get to the 150, she's going to win this. She's going to win it. But she can tear a hamstring. She can fall up. Anything can happen. And she's against the best runners in the world. And then she explodes into the straight. And in that full body suit, she goes, bang, away she goes. And that was the result. And on most callers, whether they're race callers like I was originally or doing the Olympics, your best ad-lib's your rehearsed ad-lib. But I didn't have anything in my mind then, but I knew we were going to win 100 goal if she won. And I knew in the back of my mind, what I'd say. And then I forgot it all in the straight. And I think I said, go, girl, go. This young girl, it's her date with destiny, this wonderful young Australian, and she won. And so, I mean, you wouldn't believe it. We put in for radio awards, and in 2001, we put in for that. I got beaten by Rex Hunt in the AFL Grand Final from the year before. Good on you, Rex. The greatest call I've ever done, I ran second.
I found out, I know you're older than me, but we're both pretty old. Any chance of retirement, or are you going to keep going?
Well, my wife says not to retire because, I'll be too old and cranky.
You'll be a pain in the neck and hanging around the house.
Now. Well, pain in the arse, probably, if I can say that. But anyway, Chris, the cameraman, thought it was funny anyway. Sorry if it's offended. But, Paul, you don't pay me to come on so I can say what I like. At the end of the day, I'm set to go until 2026 December. I haven't had any discussions with Channel 9. Look, they may have other plans for younger people to move in, younger demographics, and whatever it is, I'll probably call some football. I started calling football on the races in 1982, then in 1987. And I'll be quite happy to go back and call some football somewhere and have a bit of fun. And instead of working, starting it up past 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, getting up a bit later and having a bit of fun and still broadcasting if I'm strong enough and well enough to do it.
Great to catch up with you, my old friend. Again, congratulations. An extraordinary effort. It'll never be beaten.
You're a good man, Pricey. I really appreciate your support. All the best, mate.
Good on you. Ray Hadley.